Hi, this is Harvey Hahn. I'm going to be talking about how to get motivated, set goals, and how to achieve your goals. This is a great quote to start off on. The tragedy in life doesn't lie in not reaching your goal. The tragedy lies in having no goal to reach. I want to start off by doing some thought experiments with you all. First one, what would you try to accomplish if you knew you could not fail? What big goals would you set? What big ideas would you try to accomplish? But also, what would you try to do even if you knew you would fail? What things are so important that you're going to try to do it no matter what, even if you know the odds are stacked against you? Having these two questions kind of bookending your life will kind of help you figure out what your motivations and goals really are. Now, if you don't try at all, you've already failed. And I call this a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think that girl's not going to say yes when you ask her out on a date, so you don't ask her out, she's not going to say yes. There was no opportunity for her to say yes to you. Sometimes you have to take a shot, you have to take a chance, you have to step out in courage. And just one thing to help motivate all of you, just remember this verse in the Bible, I can do all things through God who strengthens me, Philippians 4:13. Now, one of the big problems in not only goals, habits, is your motivation. Now, you can have an internal loci of motivation or an external, and internal works much better. Outside or outcome-based habits or goals are things like, I want to look good at my daughter's wedding, or I want to get in bikini shape, or I want to get a six-pack, or I want to get enough money to buy a really cool sports car. Those are all external things, typically not strongly motivating enough to make you do things for longer than a couple of weeks or a couple of months. And that's why people just fall off the wagon. Now, internal or identity-based habits or goals are things that are important to you. These are things that are worth struggling for, worth sacrificing for, worth actually suffering for to get the long-term goal. And this is definitely a thing that's not short-term based, but this is delayed gratification for a bigger long-term goal. So one of the bigger questions that you have to ask yourself is, what is your why? This is probably a famous picture, especially for people in Ohio. Obviously, this is the Wright brothers. Now, when you remember the Wright brothers, you think that they're the first people to fly an airplane, and you're right. But the incredible thing about them is they are basically working in a bicycle shop. Bicycle shop was not their hobby, that was their livelihood. And they took all the extra time, expertise they learned there, and the money they made into trying to make an airplane. The group of people that worked with them, none of them had a college education, and there wasn't a whole bunch of financial support. I mean, they were fixing bicycles. Now, in comparison, anyone know who this guy is? Of course not. Only an aviation buff would know. He's basically out of the history books. This is Langley. He does have an airport named after him. Langley was also a contemporary of the Wright brothers, and he had the same goal. He wanted to build an airplane. Now, he had a contract from the government that's basically valued at $1 million, our dollar values back then. And that was because the military was obviously very interested in airplanes for military use. Now, the day after the Wright brothers announced that they had flown successfully at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, what did Langley do? He quit. He dropped out of the airplane race because someone else had already done it. His goal was external. It was an outcomes-driven goal. And when he could not achieve it, someone beat him, he dropped it. All right. It was not that important to him. The Wright brothers, everything in their life was about trying to get off the ground. And that's a great example for us. Here's a really interesting example. Many of you aren't football fans, but this is Eddie Lacy, who was a running back for the Green Bay Packers. He won a national championship at the University of Alabama, drafted highly, and did great the first couple of years. Then he started having a weight problem that seriously impacted his football career, because obviously the heavier you are, the faster you're not going to be. So here's a picture of him near the end of his 5-year NFL career. He actually had parts of his contract that gave him extra money if he met weight goals. If he met all the weight goals, he would earn an extra $350,000 a year by just cutting weight, but he couldn't do it. Now, I'm not saying this is right or wrong or trying to fat shame him or anything. But what you have to understand is here's a guy whose whole life as a little kid, high school, college, and as a young man in the pros was playing football, being a running back. But that was not that important to him. And he let that all go. His internal motivation to play football was actually lower than probably enjoying eating food, being happy, and having a good time. Now, we have to start thinking about what really is success. Anyone know who John Benton is? Fascinating story. So, models that are at the cusp of becoming supermodels, they go hang out with him and pay him like $20,000 to have him teach them how to get even into better shape. And what the goals are typically are they want to lose 1 inch around their waist and half an inch around their hips and thighs. And these girls are already sticks to begin with. But that's what it's going to take for them to get the next modeling contract. So here's a picture of a girl before she started working with John Benton. And here's a picture afterward. Now, when I first heard this story, I thought it was ludicrous for someone to pay $20,000 for a personal trainer. But my wife actually made a good point. This is their life. This is their goal. 20K now, when they can make millions of dollars afterward, is not that big of a deal. Also, their goal isn't to get skinnier or lose half an inch or an inch around their body part. Their goal is to look better, get a bigger modeling contract, make a lot of money, and then have the lifestyle of a supermodel. That's the big time goal they have. Changing their body morphometrics or shape, that's a step to get to the big goal, which is to become a supermodel. Now, there's another thing we have to think about, short versus long term. There's a great quote by Jordan Peterson. He says, pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. A lot of times in life, you're going to be faced with a challenge or a choice where you can do the easy thing right then, and that will make your life easier for the moment, such as like a white lie or a big lie. But what's going to happen is that easy, less painful choice in the moment will usually lead to bigger, harder choices later on. So it's better to always think long term, do what's right, what is meaningful, and you won't have to make this choice. Now, the Bible puts it a different way. They ask, what good is it going to be for you to gain the whole world if you lose your soul? Something pretty important to think about. Now, there's another thing to look at long term. David Brooks, who's wrote several books, great author, has an incredible 5-minute long TED talk that I highly encourage you to go find, where he asks, should you live for your resume or your eulogy? Should you live in such a way to build your resume, your achievements, your accomplishments up, or should you live in such a way that you have a massive impact on the people around you, so that at your funeral, tons of people come and say how meaningful, how important you were to them? And he divides this into what he calls Adam 1 or Adam 2. Adam 1 is the worldly man, make a lot of money, powerful, well-known, basic accomplishments, possessions, etc. Adam 2 is the spiritual man. Are you going to serve others? Are you going to make other people feel better? Are you going to help others? And you can make this choice, and this is a choice that you'll probably have to make every day for the rest of your life. But it really defines who you are. And this is important. Your goals have to align with your priorities, or you get what we call cognitive dissonance, where you say some things, you believe some things, but what you're doing is opposite, and that really makes people feel uncomfortable inside. Once again, your internal goals, your internal motivation has to match what you're trying to do on the outside. And that's why it's very important for all those things to have to start on the inside. Now, one thing I'm just going to touch on this is that a lot of people will have a lot of money, be successful, or even do a lot of charity work. They still fall hollow. One thing I'd like you all to consider is just read Ecclesiastes 3:11, where it says, God has put eternity into our hearts. So there is a feeling that we know that there's more to life than just this world, and that's eternity. And we have to kind of think in that kind of mindset to be truly fulfilled and happy. Now, one thing that's really interesting to think and go through as an exercise is what the Japanese call Icky Guy. And the first thing about Icky Guy sounds like some kind of person like an ex-boyfriend you want to get rid of and then take a shower and clean yourself off. But if you look at this graph and actually study this, it's pretty telling and pretty instructive actually. So I highly recommend this. So the top circle asks, what do you love? What do you love to do? The next circle says, what does the world need? What role can you fill that's important, meaningful? The bottom circle is, what can you be paid for? You got to pay the bills, got to make some money, got to live, buy some food. So that is a factor, let's be honest. Finally, on the last circle, it asks, what are you actually good at? And when you can overlap all these things, what you love, what serves the world, what you can make a living off of, and what you're actually good at, you get what you call the Icky Guy, which is your purpose or reason for being. When you find that, everything else is a lot easier. Now, purpose, and this has been kind of a fluffy talk and there's been no data, but they've actually studied people and they asked them, do you have a sense of purpose or no sense of purpose? And what you can find is people that have no sense of purpose, they die a lot faster than people that have a sense of purpose. Meaning drives living. If you have no reason to live, it's actually harder to live. Here's a great example. There's a study that they did where they had people come and dig a ditch. They got paid. And at the end of the day, the boss said, fill back the ditch. And people were so frustrated because all the hard effort they did was now just totally wasted. Now, at the end of the day, the boss also said, I have another job for you guys. I want you all to come back tomorrow. I'm going to pay you double. But then people asked, what are we going to do? And he said the exact same thing. You know what happened the next day? Nobody showed up. It doesn't matter if you get paid. You need to feel some worth or value in what you do, and you have to have some worth and value in yourself. Mindset's also incredibly important. This is a great quote. Whether you think you can or whether you think you cannot, you're right. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think you're going to fail and you don't try, you've already failed. If you think you can, you will keep trying until you succeed. This is my favorite example. Anyone know what 359.4 means? It occurred on May 6, 1954. I'll give you a hint, I'm a big runner. Okay, this is when Bannister broke the 4-minute mile. Up to that time, people thought it was impossible to go sub 4 in the mile. It's actually funny, doctors, I'm a cardiologist, so I think it's even more funny, but doctors back then would say that if someone could do it, their heart would explode and they'd probably die. So anyway, Bannister breaks the 4-minute barrier and everyone's really excited. 3 months later, what happened? His main competitor also went sub 4. Then a couple months later, they had what they called the race of the century. They both ran the mile, they both went sub 4. Since that time, I think over 200 or 300 people have gone sub 4, including some like 36 high schoolers. The point of making this story is once people know that a barrier can be broken, that this can be achieved, that this mountain can be climbed, a lot of people can do it. So the hard part's the first guy to show it's possible, the rest benefit from that. Now, thinking about goals and your motivation, one really helpful exercise is what they call the Dickens process. Now, there's something called opportunity costs. Suppose I have $100 and I buy something that costs $60, like some headphones. Now, a minute later, I see something else that costs $50 that I like even more. I can't buy that now. I had $100, I dropped 60, I only have 40 left. The opportunity to buy the other object has been eliminated because I invested and paid the price of the first object. This doesn't happen just with money. This happens with your mindset and your motivation. Now, this is something that Tony Robbins does with his crowd at a lot of his seminars. The question you have to ask yourself is, what are your beliefs costing you? Everyone has a set of beliefs. Everyone has a set of kind of restrictions or limitations that they put on themselves. What impact is that having on your life and your happiness? So the first question is, what have your beliefs cost you in the past? Maybe you didn't think you're that smart, so you didn't really try hard in high school. So you didn't get good grades, didn't get a good SAT score, didn't go to a great college, didn't really take harder classes, and you've limited yourself and had a huge impact on your career and your earning potential. Maybe you thought, hey, I'm not good enough to make the tennis team or the basketball team, so you don't even try. But maybe if you did try, you would have been the worst person on the team, but you practice with better people, get better, and eventually improve. And a lot of people are late bloomers. You could totally change your sports career trajectory by just trying that. So there's a lot of things like that. You also have to ask yourself, what are your beliefs, goals, motivations costing you in the present? At work, are you feeling like, I'm not going to get that promotion, I'm not even going to try? Or I'd really like to ask that girl or guy out, but I think they're going to say no. So I'm not even going to try. You've totally eliminated any chance of success because you're not going for it. Same thing, I'd like to be healthier, but I can't even walk 100 feet. So I'm not even going to try. You are stopping yourself from making any progress. You're costing yourself a lot of stuff here. Finally, now you can think what the obvious next question is. What are these beliefs, goals, motivations going to cost you in your own future? What are you going to miss out on going forward? The past is done. You've already had the opportunity cost, and you've expended a lot of effort and lost a lot of opportunity in the past. That can't be gotten back. But going forward, how much are you going to limit yourself? And the less you limit yourself, the more upside, the more potential your life actually has. Now, I'm going to just talk about SMART goals real quick. Now, goals should be specific. You don't want to say, I want to lose weight or I want to run. You need to say something like, I want to lose 25 pounds. I want to drop a dress size. I want to run a 5K. They need to be measurable. And that's why they have to be specific. If they're not measurable, it's kind of hard to know, did I achieve my goal? Did I make 50% progress? There have to be some way to quantitate those goals. The third thing is important, is it has to be achievable. You can't make outlandish goals that are unrealistic, because that's going to disappoint yourself and demoralize yourself. Small goals and setting new goals is better than a big audacious goal that you just have no shot at. And that goes to being realistic too. That's why tiny steps make a big difference. The last thing, T, time, you have to put a time limit on these goals. When am I going to start? When am I going to check in on my progress? And when do I want to really achieve the end goal? Now, these specific goals are very important. And there's a great example by James Clear in Atomic Habits. It's interesting. If you start from Los Angeles and fly to Washington, D.C., many of us have done already. But if you just have a 1-degree change in your trajectory, what happens is when you're done flying, instead of being in Washington, D.C., you wind up in New York. New York's a great place to visit, but if you don't want to go there and your goal is to be in Washington, D.C., that's just a huge error. So that's why your goals have to be very specific, and the end point has to be very clear in your own mind. All right, don't be a rebel without a clue, just rebelling against anything. You want to have a focused, rational reason and target that you're headed for. All right, now to kind of wrap it all up with a true story. Anyone know who August Landmesser is? Does anyone remember this picture? All right, this is at a shipyard in Germany during the Nazi regime. And August is the only person not giving the Nazi salute here. All right, now the story behind this is he was actually a member of the Nazi party, member in good standing, believed it, but then he fell in love with a Jewish girl. After that, he rethought what was wrong or right with the Nazi party. And then he goes, I can't support this anymore. So he basically became a member in bad standing. He actually got fired from his job. They would not let him marry his girlfriend. They're actually separated. He eventually got sent to the Russian front and he died. Now, I know everyone's going, this is a very depressing story. But what's really, really, really incredible to think about is what everything cost him and why he didn't. At some point, he could always turn around and said, I don't love this girl anymore. I embrace the Nazi party. And he could have worked his way back in, but he didn't. These choices, these goals cost him at every step. And I don't know him, I'm not sure, but I think he was happy to pay that price because his ultimate goal was he wanted to be with his Jewish girl that he loved so much. Think about that. Are your goals so focused, so finite, so meaningful, so powerful, they drive you to do things that make your own life very uncomfortable? And like him, even being led to being sent to the Russian front. I'm going to end on this. This is a great quote. The reason most people never reach their goals is that they don't define them or ever seriously consider them as believable or achievable. Remember SMART goals? Winners, which is hopefully all of us, can tell you where they're going, what they plan to do along the way, and who will be sharing the adventure with them. So I hope this talk has helped kind of make you think more about what your motivations are, what your goals are, how you can get some deep-seated meaning when you set these goals, and that can help drive you forward to achieve it. Now, in our next segment, we're going to actually talk about how to use habits to power the achievement of your goals.